They thought she was just another rookie in a uniform too clean to belong, a face too calm to have seen real battle, and eyes too soft to have stared down death. But they were wrong. Dead wrong. The first day Lieutenant Harper walked into Camp Hawthorne, the Marine base that prided itself on breaking egos before breakfast. She didn't say a word. The wind blew red dust across the yard, flags snapped sharp in the desert sun, and a group of men doing pull-ups stopped mid-count to look her up and down like she was lost. "You sure you're in the right place, sweetheart?" One of them called out, sweat dripping from his brow. She didn't answer. She just looked at the training board, took note of the posted schedule, and moved on. Her quiet unnerved them, and that was just the beginning. Before we get into what really happened, if you love your mom and dad, hit that subscribe button and show them some love, because this story will make you proud of every parent who ever fought for something bigger than themselves. Harper had been recruited after a top-secret selection phase, the kind of training few knew existed. She wasn't loud, didn't brag, didn't post on social media. Her record was classified, sealed even from most military databases. But among those who had seen her file, her name carried quiet weight. She had spent 6 years in covert operations overseas, 3 of them embedded with SEAL teams under Joint Task Force Command. Yet when she arrived at Camp Hawthorne, the new captain didn't care who she was. Captain Travis Ward was one of those officers who thought leadership came from intimidation. He had the build of a linebacker, the smirk of a man who liked control, and the arrogance of someone who had never been challenged, not by a woman. Anyway, the first conflict started during a standard hand-to-hand drill. Harper paired up with a new recruit, but Captain Ward decided to watch from the sidelines. He walked over, crossed his arms, and said, "Let's see what you've got, soldier." "You look like you couldn't knock over a broomstick." Laughter rippled through the line. Harper simply nodded. The whistle blew. 10 seconds later, her opponent was flat on the mat, gasping for air. The laughter stopped. Ward's smirk faded, but not his ego. "Lucky hit," he muttered. "Try me." Harper hesitated. "Sir, I don't think that's appropriate." "That's an order, Lieutenant." The circle closed in. Soldiers formed a ring, hungry for entertainment. Harper didn't want to embarrass him, but she also knew refusing a direct command could end her career. The whistle blew again. Ward lunged faster than she expected, and when she dodged his grab, he slammed his knee into her face, hard. The sound echoed through the gym. She hit the ground, blood streaking her cheek. The room went silent. Ward straightened his uniform. "Lesson 1, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "The battlefield doesn't care if you're male or female. Toughen up." Then he walked off, leaving her there. What he didn't see was the quiet rage in her eyes as she got back up, wiped her face, and stood tall. She didn't report him. She didn't speak to anyone. But everyone saw what she did next. The next morning, during the marksmanship assessment, Harper arrived early. She spent 20 minutes calibrating her rifle, breathing slow, heart steady. When the rest of the unit showed up, Captain Ward strutted in with his coffee, barking orders. "All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's see who actually knows how to shoot." Targets were set at 600 meters. Standard issue M110 rifles lined the table. Ward made a show of loading his weapon first. "I'll start us off," he said, kneeling at the firing line. He hit 8 out of 10 shots. Respectable. Anyone think they can beat that? He looked directly at Harper. "Lieutenant, care to redeem yourself?" She nodded once, silently. Her hands moved with mechanical precision. 1 breath in, 1 breath out. She squeezed the trigger. 10 shots, 10 hits. Not just hits, bullseyes. The range officer stared at the screen. "Sir," he said slowly, that's a perfect grouping. Less than an inch spread." Ward's smirk faltered. The others murmured. Harper stood, unloaded, and without a word walked off. That night, whispers spread through the barracks. "You see that grouping? No recoil correction. She's a damn machine." But the captain wasn't done. His pride had been wounded, and pride is a dangerous thing in men who lead for the wrong reasons. The following week, he scheduled a live simulation exercise, urban combat with air support coordination. Normally, officers observed. Ward, however, insisted on joining the field unit. "Let's see if the SEAL girl can keep up," he sneered. The team moved through a mock village under blazing heat. Harper stayed focused, clearing corners, calling out targets, precision perfect. But halfway through, Ward overrode her command on comms, ordering a squad into open terrain. She tried to correct him. "Sir, that's a crossfire zone." "I gave an order, Lieutenant." Seconds later, simulated rounds riddled the squad with paint hits. "They're down," the training operator confirmed. Harper clenched her jaw. Ward turned to her, red with anger. "You questioning me again?" He snapped. "You might think you're special, but here you follow my rules." By evening, rumors reached headquarters. A SEAL liaison stationed at the base overheard the radio chatter and filed a report. Something wasn't right about the captain's conduct. The next morning, a black SUV arrived at Camp Hawthorne. Out stepped Colonel Mason Reeves, a decorated Navy SEAL with 25 years of service and a reputation for fairness and precision. He carried himself like a storm wrapped in silence. "Where's Lieutenant Harper?" he asked. Ward met him at the gate, chest puffed. "She's in training, sir. Bit of a discipline issue." Reeves raised an eyebrow. "Funny. Her file says she trained my snipers in Kandahar 2 years ago." Ward blinked. "Excuse me?" Reeves's voice stayed even. "You heard me, Captain. She trained my snipers." That night the base was tense. Soldiers whispered. Something big was coming. Harper sat alone in the mess hall, staring into her coffee, when Reeves walked in. The whole room straightened instinctively. "At ease," he said. He sat across from her. "You didn't report it," he said quietly. "Why?" Harper shrugged. "Didn't seem worth it. I've dealt with worse." Reeves studied her. "You shouldn't have to." He paused, then added, "Tomorrow you'll be on the long-range trial. I want to see something." She nodded once. The next morning, the range was set up at 2,200 meters, extreme distance. Wind flags fluttered. The entire unit gathered. Reeves watched from behind the spotting scope. Harper settled into position, breath steady, mind quiet. "Target at 1,200, Reeves called. She adjusted for wind. One shot, metal ping, direct hit. "Target at 1,500, she adjusted again, ping. The whispers grew louder. Reeves gave one final call. "Target at 2,000 meters. Even Ward looked stunned. That range was nearly impossible under standard conditions. Harper took a long breath. The shot rang out. Silence, then ping. Perfect hit. Reeves stood slowly, turned to Ward and said, "That's what a Navy SEAL can do." But what came next would make headlines and test everything they knew about her. The air that morning was heavy with quiet awe. Every soldier at Camp Hawthorne now looked at Lieutenant Harper differently. Not as the quiet woman in uniform, but as someone who had just rewritten their definition of precision. Even the wind seemed to respect her. Captain Ward, however, stood rigid, jaw locked, fists clenched behind his back. He wasn't used to being outdone, especially not in front of his men. The sting of humiliation burned deep, and for a man like him, that burn always needed a target. That night, while most of the base celebrated silently, Ward paced his quarters like a caged animal. He replayed every moment, the laughter that had died on his lips, the colonel's words echoing in his head. That's what a Navy SEAL can do. He told himself he had to restore order, but what he really wanted was payback. The next day, a new operation alert flashed across the baseboard, a last-minute emergency simulation. Harper, Reeves, and Ward were all assigned. It was an integrated drill, simulated hostage rescue under night conditions, full tactical realism. But there was something off. Harper could tell the moment she stepped onto the tarmac. The gear setup was sloppy, comms channel mismatched, and Ward's name was listed as field commander, an unusual override that hadn't been cleared through chain of command. Reeves noticed too, but he stayed silent, observing. "All right, team," Ward barked. "Tonight we run it like the real thing. You follow my orders, no exceptions." His tone was sharp, meant to reassert control. Harper didn't respond. She simply checked her rifle, adjusted her vest, and stared into the dark expanse of the training field. The choppers lifted off just before midnight. The desert was pitch black except for faint moonlight glinting off their helmets. The team rappelled down into a mock village compound, one that eerily resembled those Harper had once cleared in real combat zones. But 5 minutes into the drill, she realized something was wrong. The laser grids marking the perimeter were off. No signal flares, and her night vision feed was glitching. "Command, confirm training mode?" She whispered. Silence. Static. Then, faintly, Reeves's voice. "Stay alert. Something's off." Before she could respond, simulated gunfire erupted. But it didn't sound simulated. These weren't blanks. They were live rounds. Ward's voice came through the comms, frantic. "All units, pull back! Pull back!" He had lost control. Panic rippled through the team as real bullets cracked through the air. Harper's instincts took over. "Everyone down!" she ordered, moving fast, her rifle steady. She spotted movement across the field, figures that didn't belong to the base. Smugglers, maybe, or rogue contractors who'd breached the training zone. The mission had turned real fast. Harper guided her squad through the chaos, covering their retreat. Ward, meanwhile, froze. She saw him out of cover, firing blindly into the dark. "Captain, move!" she shouted. He didn't. A round ricocheted near his leg. Without thinking, she sprinted through open ground, tackled him to the dirt, and dragged him behind a barrier. "Stay down!" she hissed. He stared at her, wide-eyed, for the first time seeing not a subordinate but someone who had just saved his life. Within minutes, helicopters from the nearby base arrived. Reeves himself was on the lead bird, rifle in hand. The intruders scattered under the spotlight, and within an hour, the range was secured. No fatalities, but the report was devastating. An unauthorized live-fire incident triggered by a breakdown in leadership. The next morning, Reeves summoned both Harper and Ward to the command office. His tone was ice. "You compromised your team, Captain. You signed off on a simulation without verifying the perimeter. Do you understand how close we came to losing people?" Ward tried to speak, but Reeves cut him off. "She saved your life, Captain, and you still owe her an apology." Harper stood silently beside them, bruised and exhausted, her eyes steady. Ward turned toward her, his pride crushed. "Lieutenant," he began quietly, "I misjudged you." She didn't respond right away. "You didn't misjudge me, sir," she said finally. "You never tried to know me." Then she turned to Reeves and saluted. "Permission to return to the field range, Colonel." Reeves nodded. "Granted. And Lieutenant, good work last night." She walked out without another word. The silence she left behind was deafening. Over the next few weeks, Harper's legend grew quietly. She never bragged, never told the story herself, but others did. The footage of her long-range test made its way into training archives. Young recruits whispered about the ghost sniper who never missed. Ward, to his credit, began to change. He stopped shouting as much during drills, started listening more. Once Harper found him alone at the range, staring at a target with his rifle untouched. "I can't even hit 1,000 meters, he muttered. "How do you stay that calm?" She considered the question, then said softly, "I stopped trying to impress anyone. That's when I started hitting." For the first time, he smiled, a small, tired smile that hinted at humility. "Guess I needed to learn that the hard way." "Most people do," she replied. But just when it seemed everything had settled, the story took another twist. 2 weeks later, a military review board arrived unannounced. Someone had reported excessive conduct during the altercation that left Harper bloodied on her first day. Ward was under formal investigation. Reeves called Harper in to testify, but she refused. "Sir," she said, "I don't want to ruin anyone's career." "He's learned his lesson," Reeves frowned. "That's not the point, Lieutenant." "With respect, sir, it is to me." Reeves studied her, then nodded slowly. "You're too good for most of us, you know that?" She smiled faintly. "I'm just doing my job." The review board ultimately issued a reprimand to Ward, not dismissal, but enough to mark his record. When he received it, he went straight to Harper's barracks. "You didn't testify against me," he said quietly. "Why?" She shrugged. "You already learned the lesson." He looked down, shame written across his face. "You should have let them throw me out." "Wouldn't have changed what happened," she replied. "But maybe it'll change what happens next." And it did. From that day, Ward started fighting for real reform inside the camp. He pushed for stricter safety audits, more accountability, and he even opened specialized training slots for women in tactical leadership, something unheard of before. 1 year later, Harper stood on the parade ground as Reeves retired. The sun hung low, banners fluttering in the warm breeze. When Reeves took the podium, he spoke about courage, not the loud kind that shouts in battle, but the quiet kind that endures humiliation and still stands taller the next day. Then he looked directly at Harper. "Sometimes strength doesn't roar," he said. "Sometimes it whispers, 'I'm still here.'" The crowd turned to her, applauding. Harper's eyes met Ward's across the field. He nodded respectfully. She returned it. For once, there was no rivalry, no resentment, only understanding. Later that evening, as the base lights dimmed and the horizon faded to dusk, Harper stood at the shooting range alone. She loaded her rifle, took aim at a target 2,000 meters out, and breathed in the silence. One shot. The faint metallic ping echoed through the night. She smiled softly, whispering to herself, "Still got it." Behind her, Reeves approached quietly, hands in his pockets. "Heading to a new command next week," he said. "You sure you don't want to join my team again?" She shook her head. "I think it's time this place learned a few more lessons." Reeves smiled. "They already are." Weeks later, Harper's story began circulating beyond the base. Online forums, military blogs, even local news segments. "The Silent Seal," they called her. People wrote that she represented resilience, the kind that doesn't need applause. But she never sought fame. Instead, she spent her evenings mentoring new recruits, teaching them not just how to shoot, but how to think before pulling the trigger. She told them the same thing she once told Ward. It's not about proving anyone wrong. It's about proving yourself right. And as the camera fades on the story of Lieutenant Harper, the quiet woman who took a knee to the head and stood taller for it, one truth remains. Strength isn't measured by rank or noise, but by restraint and grace under fire. So before you scroll away, if you love your mom and dad, hit that subscribe button and show some love to her, because this story is about courage, respect, and the power of humility. And tell me, from which part of the country are you watching the story tonight?